Orange County's Real Estate Hot 30. I'm Lina Fayyad.
And I'm McDonald.
And in today's 30-minute segment, we're going to be talking about a few things. We're going to start off by updating you on how the market's doing now that we're almost at the end of January 2020. Gosh, time really does fly by. And our tips and tricks today are going to be for our buyers who are currently renting in the middle of leases and how to purchase a home if you're in the middle of a lease, what to expect. And on the flip side, for sellers, what to expect from their buyers. So Holly, let's talk about the market a little bit. How are you today?
I'm good. So I think as far as the market goes, 2020 is starting off with a pretty good bang. We're seeing there's a lot of buyers out there right now. The low interest rates, and they are low, are really stimulating buyers, making them want to make a move, get a purchase in, lock in a low rate for the lifetime of their loan.
Yeah, and if we all know 2019 was definitely a peak, and I think we did great in 2019. So, definitely we're in Orange County, and it's definitely a lucky market. But regardless, I definitely have some positive vibes going into 2020 now that I think people just want to make a big change. And so, do you have any? I don't know. What do you advise for what's your forecast for the end of 2020? Hopefully. I don't think we're going into a crash, as people are saying. And,
from what I've heard from other industry people that have a good feel on the market and economics and everything, 2020 looks like it'll be a coasting year. It looks like the low interest rates are going to keep people in the market. It's a good time for sellers because they're still going to get a really good price. The prices that we're seeing today in some areas of Orange County are surpassing where we were in the crash of the market. So I think that for sellers, it's a good time if they want to get a good price for their house in current market. And for buyers, it's a good time if they want to lock in a low interest rate.
No, absolutely. And gosh, I think they're in the threes now. Don't quote me on that, everyone out there, but they're looking pretty good.
Yeah, most of my clients are getting rates in the low to mid threes. All depends on their, situation as far as their credit score and if they're going to be owner-occupied or not owner-occupied. But yes, we are seeing really low rates, and I think there's still a possibility they might even go lower from what I've heard. I don't think drastically lower, mind you, but I think they're on the
Fingers
low side.
crossed.
Sounds like they're probably on the low side for a little while, so that's good news.
No, absolutely. That's kind of our update for the market for 2020. If you guys have any questions about that, please let us know. Moving on to our next tips and tricks. Today is going to be about leases and our buyers. So, who's renting here besides me? I am. Anyone? No?
Well, I've been a renter, so I can relate.
Still renting,
Yeah, I think this is a very good topic to talk about because roughly 50% of Orange County, more or less, is a renter-occupied market. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of rentals out there. There's a lot of new builds that are, new construction condos that are turning into luxury rentals. They're beautiful. People love the amenities. The rents are high. The rents go up almost every year. That turns into a vicious cycle for a lot of people. Yeah. It's very hard to save for a down payment in Orange County when, even just getting into a condo or a townhome is going to cost you close to $500,000 to have a sizable down payment. If you're constantly paying a good amount for your rent, it's hard to keep up and save and really plan for that budget. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So typically for buyers out there, how should they start the process, or how long before, since the scenarios we've seen together as far as leases, where a buyer gets stuck, like, I don't want to break my lease. Mm-hmm. So what can you tell me about that?
Well, what I can say is I kind of wanted to start off by saying that one thing that Lina and I come across a lot with leads that we meet at open houses or leads that we get online, it's like this scenario plays out so often, so at least you'll know you're not alone if you're in this boat. But we'll meet somebody that says their lease is going to be ending in a month or so. Maybe they just got a notice saying that their rent is going up or that they're going to be going month to month and they're uncertain about if that rental amount is going to change. And so that sparks them and ignites them to want to look for a place to buy, because then they realize, I have a little bit of a freedom opportunity here. I'm not in a lease anymore. I won't be soon. So this is my chance. But the fact is, if they are just starting their search that close to the end of the lease, it's very challenging. It's very, very challenging to actually secure a property, make sure your escrow is going to close, make sure your loan's going to be good, and time it out with the end of your lease. And I totally empathize. When I purchased my house, I was renting, and of course I wanted to not have to pay for a rent and a mortgage at the same time. No one wants to, you're not alone there. It's expensive. But the fact is that you have to think about the long-term projection of it, and I know nobody wants to hear that because nobody wants to spend double.
Yeah.
But the fact is that houses are, if you find the house of your dreams, it's not necessarily going to wait for you just because of your situation. So you either have to wait for a house that's going to perfectly time out, which is unlikely, or you're going to get stuck possibly, renting for another year, which is probably not the ideal scenario if you want to buy now.
And I've actually seen that exact same scenario where one of our buyers was just so afraid. He's like, my lease is not going to end for another 10 months. And I'm like, you know what? That's actually, you should kind of get started now. So as far as timing, what's a good time frame we can tell our buyers to kind of start looking? Not even get, because keep in mind the lending process takes time too.
Right. And that's so important. And I know we touched on it last time that you want to get pre-qualified or pre-approved first so you know what you can actually afford. But I would say that if you are thinking about buying, there have been studies shown that buyers typically take about 9 months to go through the whole process. It doesn't take 9 months to buy a house, mind you, but it takes 9 months in general, for people to go through, learn the market, learn what they want, what they don't want, learn their deal breakers, learn what they can expect, learn what their payment's gonna be, what down payment the whole thing, getting out there, from boots to straps is about 9 months. That being said, I've seen people do it in much less. I've seen people under the gun, they make a decision, they go with it, and it all works out. But I would say that that's less of the norm than the opposite. So I would advise clients, I would advise buyers that are thinking about looking and getting their feet wet to really start at least 6 months before. Here's the thing. If you look 6 months before, you're getting out there, you are maybe touring open houses, or you connect with an agent, you let them know your timeline, you let them know what you're looking for. Then you need to find it. And it's so rare that you fall in love with the first house you find. And if you do, power to you. But it's a rarity.
Never,
Because as you explore, you start to learn things that you maybe weren't even thinking of. You'll learn that it's necessary for you to, for example, have a garage, or it's necessary to have dual sinks in the master. I don't know. Everybody has their things. But
especially for a purchase that you're thinking about for the next 30 years. It's not really, you're thinking, the future of the kids, the space, what you're investing in it, So 3 to 6 months is typically what you advise to kind of get a start on going out there, looking at homes, open houses.
Yeah, learn what works for you, learn what's going to be good for you. Think a little bit more long term. I mean, this is going to be a place where you're going to own it and your mortgage is going to stay for 30 years. And of course you can move sooner, but then you just have to factor in, how is that going to work financially for you? If you turn around and want to sell it next year because you've outgrown the space, let's say, or it wasn't an area that you thought you'd be happy here and now you're not, it's challenging to turn around and sell it, and then you could lose some money, and nobody wants that either.
Of course.
Yeah, and also it's imperative, I think, to really get out there and connect with a lender. I think it's important to realize that I know a lot of buyers are hesitant to connect with lenders. I'm trying to wrap my head around all the reasons why. I mean, I know it can be a hassle. There's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of private information that you're providing to somebody that's really, more or less a stranger. But it's part of the deal. If you're going to get a loan, you have to provide the information. You won't get a loan without it. No lender is going to, bank on you if they don't have your personal information, unfortunately. Collecting all of that paperwork is so valuable. I have other buyers that have connected with a lender well in advance, maybe a year or so in advance, not for the primary purpose of saying, I'm going to buy a house in 3 or 4 months, but more so that the lender can look at their financing, look at their background, their pay, their savings, their debts. It's such a calculated formula that goes into the whole loan process. So a lender can look at it and give you advice. They can say, hey, if you can lower your debts by paying off this car loan sooner, you're going to get a better loan, or you're going to get a better interest rate. or if you can save this much more money, you're going to be in a better position to get a better type of loan. So I think talking to a lender, even if you're not quite ready, it's just so helpful. So I would suggest
fixing your credit, or like you said, certain dynamics of to make it look good.
Yeah, because credit score is big. You're totally right. I mean, your credit score plays a role in what sort of interest rate you're going to get. You might see commercials that say you can get a 3% interest rate, but that's probably the best case scenario, and that's maybe going off of somebody that has an 850 FICO score, which most of us don't have. So
realistically,
yeah, I mean everything counts. Everything is so important. So if you talk to a lender, I would advise that. And then the good thing is that if you do go all the way and get pre-approved, those letters are good for usually 90 days or so. So at least they have your information, and then they just need to update it, which is a lot easier. And then if you do find a house that you like, you're already ready to go.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
So you have the pre-approval letter, put it with the offer, and just hit send. So that's great. So thank you, Holly. That's a lot of info. So on the flip side, for sellers, what do you what can we let them know also to expect, as far as renting back their own home during a purchase? Enlighten me, because this is something we have ran into, so many times.
Right. Okay. So we think it's important for sellers to realize too that this is, where a lot of the buyer pool is coming from, is millennials, people that are in rentals, because there are so many rentals in our area. So you have to just be aware that these are some of the concerns, the thoughts, the fears of buyers out there. So you do want to be a little sensitive to it. Obviously, if you get an offer from somebody that doesn't have these fears and it's a good, strong offer, we understand you may want to run with that offer. Totally fine. That's how real estate works. But if you do get an offer from somebody that's a buyer that's maybe a little hesitant, maybe they're asking for a longer escrow, maybe they're hoping you'll work with them a little bit so that they don't have to carry two places at once, we're just asking you to really be open to that if your situation allows for it. So some sellers are in a rush. They need to be out in 30 days. They need their money in 30 days. Understood. But some sellers have a little bit more flexibility. Some sellers possibly do need their funds sooner rather than later, but they don't necessarily need to move. So one option that we'll see sellers do is they'll say, okay, we would like a 30-day escrow, meaning we will close escrow, we will have our money in 30 days in our bank account. But hey, we don't need to move. Our other house isn't ready yet. We can just rent our house back from our new owner, the buyer, and then the buyer at least isn't out of pocket for 2 mortgages. I mean, that way you don't have to move twice as well, which is nice. You don't have to move to like a short-term place or, pack up all your stuff and put it into storage. So there are some flexible options that you have there if the situation warrants it. Yeah.
Absolutely. It kind of helps the seller, also give them time, like you said, to move and not crunch down,
Yeah.
You got to be out by XYZ. But
I have sellers that are, buying new construction and maybe their home is not ready yet, or they're moving out of state and they still need time to locate another property, and they don't know exactly where they would like to have their time, just like any buyer would, to identify a house that works for them. So just as it is a big investment for any buyer, for that seller that is also buying, it is still a big investment. So they have a little bit of flexibility, but they also have assurance that they have the funds from the sale of their house. I also wanted to touch back on one other thing with buyers that are in leases. So not to beat a dead horse, but I just want to emphasize it is rare to find a place that you can close escrow on, say February 29th, and then move into your new house March 1st. Even if the timing seems perfect, let me just add this caveat. It's almost never perfect because you still have to pack up your stuff. You still have to get it to the new house. It's a lot of moving pieces. And I think that if people set an unrealistic expectation, they're just kind of doomed to be disappointed.
Yeah.
I think padding it a little bit is good. I think you need to be prepared that it might unfortunately cost you a little bit more to make that sacrifice and do that balance. But I would advise you that in the long run, when you are looking back in 10 years, when you go to sell your house, you're not going to be that upset about such a small amount of money that you needed to
help move or
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Put all the pieces together. But I know in the moment every penny counts, and I get it. It's a lot. You're coming out of pocket for your down payment and inspections and appraisals. So everything is just extra, and I get that it's frustrating. But I just think that it's important for you to understand that, if you're trying to align everything so perfectly, it could really set you up for disappointment, and it could ultimately turn you off to the whole home buying experience altogether. We have seen buyers that get frustrated because they give themselves such a short time frame, and then when it's not working out, they essentially give up and they go ahead and they go, okay, I'm just gonna renew my lease for another year. But ultimately, when they go back a year later, are they truly happy that they rented for another year?
Never.
Depends on the market, but in most cases, I think a lot of people would have preferred to have been paying themselves back and making equity in a new home rather than forcing themselves into a rental because they had what they felt was no other option. That's the cool thing about real estate is it really is, in a sense, it's a type of freedom, but you have to also be aware that with that freedom, there becomes responsibilities and home maintenance and all of those costs, but they're all for your own protection of your asset, which is great as far as wealth building and creating a home.
Of course, and memories and for the future, like you said, looking in 10, 20 years when you're looking back at that, it's going to be such a minor thing, in the whole process of creating this beautiful, home.
Yeah.
That's great information, Holly. So, those were tips and tricks for you buyers and sellers out there. So do not hesitate if you're in the middle of a lease and would like to get started on your home purchase experience or, just the whole process. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Holly or myself. We'd be more than happy to walk you through it step by step.
May I add one other thing?
Please.
If you're in a lease, I would look carefully at your lease and see what your options are if you were to break that lease or leave it early. Is the worst case that you're responsible for the rest of the lease, or are you only responsible for a short period? All leases are different, so you definitely want to investigate that before you just assume that all leases are the same. They're not. They're all different. So you might have more options than you think you do. Plus, I have seen some landlords that are flexible. If you are not necessarily with a corporate place, some homeowners that are, managing the properties themselves might be a little bit more willing to work with you or get creative about how to let you out of your lease or let you help find a new tenant. So you do have options that you want to explore, and I just wanted to encourage you to take a look at some of those or ask us about them. We'll give you all the tips we can and help you try to make a decision that makes sense for you if you ultimately want to buy.
Fantastic. That's a great outlook. I was going to ask actually, another question. If somebody's in a lease, and let's say, they want to have a 60-day escrow, and let's say their apartments need like a 30 or 60-day notice, they can do that, correct?
Yes,
and
they can do that.
It can fall, concurrently with the escrow.
Right. So the only thing I always will warn people about is if you have to give a 30-day notice, and we only have 30 days to close escrow. Let me set the scenario. You have an offer accepted. It is a 30-day escrow. You have to give a 30-day notice to your landlord. I advise people to wait until we've at least gotten through our inspections and make sure that the loan has been approved just before giving their notice, because I would never want to see somebody give their notice, have their landlord re-rent the place out because they've given notice, and now you're in a situation where if the house doesn't work out, you have to start over. So usually I would say, if you can pad it by a couple of weeks, that's really in your best interest because you need to have a safety net. If you fall out 2 weeks before, then you're going to be scrambling to find a new place in 2 weeks, and that would be a really horrible situation to be in. So
I see. Okay, that's
yeah,
great
but
advice.
definitely consider that. And I have had buyers that have asked if they could give their 30-day notice as soon as our offer is accepted, and I'm so happy that they're excited about it. But I do think it's important to, have a little bit of a safety cushion. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. You heard that. And finally, our final segment of today's show is going to be about our pocket listings. We have some juicy pockets up there, and by that I mean some homes, excuse me by that. Holly, what can you let us know what's out there waiting for our beautiful buyers?
Yeah, so as Lena said, we do have some properties that are off market, some opportunities that have not yet hit the MLS, so they're not available online. You haven't seen them yet probably. We do have some properties that are in the Newport Beach area, gated communities. One has a pool, the other one has really close location to the Back Bay. Those sellers are ready to show their properties. If a buyer is interested, we can certainly give you more information. Newport Beach, they're single family homes above $1 million. As far as Costa Mesa goes, I have a property that'll be available. I can start showing that soon. It's a townhome. It needs some love. It's not an investor special by any means, but I would say that for somebody that wants to come in and personalize it, make it their own, get a good price, put some sweat equity into it, they could really make a nice home out of it. There's plenty of other properties that we do know about as well. It would take too much time to share them all today. But if you have any specific needs that you're looking for, we are here to connect the dots, match you up. If you have a specific need, specific price point, specific location, if we don't know about it, we will find it for you. But hit us up, let us know what you're looking for. Let us see if we can be your little matchmaker, find you the house of your dreams. And if you're a seller...
yes, exactly. And if you're a seller following that wants your home to kind of get the word around before hitting the MLS, please let us know. We'd be more than happy to get that started out for you. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Like and subscribe to our channel. And we will see you next time.
See you next week. Bye.